Okay, so for this video, we'll talk about September 11th. I've been trying to post a video for the past 2 or 3 days, and my iPhone keeps screwing up the damn video. So here's my story on September 11th, 2001. I was stationed at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico. I was part of the 49th Fighter Wing, 49th Security Forces Squadron. For those that don't know what Security Forces is, it's law enforcement and security. Pretty cut and dry. It was a training day. A lot of us were pissed off because we had to be there. And as soon as we got in there, I would say about 10, 15 of us, we got into the training room, and we had heard that one of the planes crashed into the tower. And we're like, damn, that sucks, man. Hope maybe the pilot had a heart attack. Maybe, there was some computer glitches or whatever on the plane, and that's why it crashed. So we started to go about our training, and then somebody came in and said, hey, a second plane has hit the other building. And by that time, it was like, oh, shit, what's going on? My first sergeant, Senior Master Sergeant Jones, came in and said, you guys are all a part of history. It was the first time on American soil that we were put in ThreatCon Delta. I'm not quite sure what the ThreatCons are right now, or if they even go by ThreatCons anymore, but it was the highest threat level the United States has ever been in, like I said, on American soil. So a lot of people, we had to get everybody armed up. We had people posted at the main gate with a 60 gun on top of the Humvee, and we had people posted at the Las Cruces gate. We had people at the flight line, and I was taken under the wing of Master Sergeant Coles. He wanted me to be his helper for the day, so I went and followed him around, and we went to the different posts and got people what they needed. If they needed lunch or if they needed bathroom breaks, whatever. I remember I was going to the flight line. We had the F-117 stealth fighters, and for those of you who might not be familiar with stealth fighters or F-117s, they're the planes that look like little triangles. And they were invincible to radar. So we had those planes, and actually they all went to like Italy and Turkey, Germany. They spread them out. The reason why they did that is because our base was said to be on a list for a terrorist attack because of those planes. At the time, they were the most sophisticated planes that we had. That was in our arsenal for the Air Force. So, we're at the flight line, and it was crazy because it was like a ghost town. For those of you who aren't familiar with how the hangars work and a flight line works, there's a red line around the facility with brakes in it, like 2 or 3 brakes, and that's where the security forces sets up, or if you're in the Army, the MPs, and basically you're checking people's badges. So you can cross the line. It's not like it's a wall or it's a barbed wire fence or anything like that. It's just a line on the ground. You step over it, you could get shot. So I'm sitting there, I'm like, why in the hell are we all sitting here when there's no planes? I mean, it was eerie. That's just how crazy it was. It was eerie. But I figured, you know what? It's not on my pay grade to think about it. I'm just here doing my job. And the thing that upset me was I had just gotten back from Kuwait. And at that time, you had to wait a few months before you can go TDY again. So here are my friends. I see them taking off to go overseas. And it was like, man, this sucks. And I'm stuck in Holloman. At the time, I was like, I hate that place. I would love to go back there now to Alamogordo, but at the time, it was like, man, this is bogus. I don't want to be here. I was begging my my supervisor to see what he can do to get me back overseas. So, like I said, it was a long day. Once the Pentagon got hit, going back to the whole act of it, the Pentagon got hit, and I remember A1C Bivens started crying because one of our other guys started singing "It's the End of the World as We Know It" by REM, and it freaked her out. And so we're all cracking up. She's over here crying, and it was a surreal moment. It was like, you have these towers, and it's then they were gone all of a sudden, And unbeknownst to me, my grandpa was actually in the Pentagon when it got hit. So it was an amazing time. I'm glad I was part of history. I'm glad I was in during that time. To see the different squadrons know exactly what to do. Security forces, MPF, Bear Base, the cooks. I mean, people got to eat, so even the cooks are right there, making stuff up, and it was a terrible time in history, but it was one of the most memorable times that I will ever have in the service. Looking back, or looking to now, 16 years later, I was looking at all the Facebook postings about never forget, never forget. And unfortunately, what's sad is that a lot of people have forgotten. You have these kids, these young adults who were, a few years old when it happened. To some of them weren't even alive when it happened, who don't understand what everybody went through during that time, which I don't blame them. I mean, it was the same for me when people would talk about Pearl Harbor or Vietnam. It's like, okay, every generation has their moment. So, I don't, and the thing is, it's not that the kids don't care, it's just that they're not informed. When I worked at the school, we would talk about September 11th, and I'd ask the kids, what do you guys know? Basically, all we know, Mr. Robert, is that 2 planes flew into a building and people died. I'm like, seriously? That's all these schools are teaching you? And I don't know if it's a political correctness or what, but it's like they need to know who these terrorists were. They need to know what religion they were, what country they came from, because that's part of it. I mean, that's part of it. I look at North Korea, the way North Korea is now, and I hope that these kids and these young adults don't have to live through September 11th, because it changed a lot. It's sad to say, but we lost a lot of freedoms. Life was so much better September 10th, 2001. When September 11th hit, a lot of freedoms went away. And you have some people saying, well, we got to take some freedoms from you in order to keep other freedoms. I'm not buying it, but that's the way that some people look at it. So I wish people wouldn't forget. I wish people would remember that a lot of people died that day. A lot of people are still dying because of that day, with being sick from being at ground zero. I wish our government would, I wish they would accept that and help out these people the best that they can. Because it's BS that when these guys are going in there, and it's kind of like Irma. Irma just happened, and if 5 years from now, because they had some of the buildings that were exploding over there because of the floods, are actually in Texas for the one in Texas. It's like, what happens if 10 years down the road the people that were helping around that explosion start getting sick? You gotta put 2 and 2 together, but I doubt that's gonna happen. So, but anyways, this is my story for September 11th.